Hey there, it's Jose, and I'm holding my Midna and Wolflink amiibo because today I'm going to be making the helmet for Midna. Alright, here we go. I first made a template for the front of the helmet. I'm making this out of foam, and it is actually the first time I'm using foam to this scale, and as I'm cutting this out, I'm still trying to figure out at this point what I'm doing and how I'm going to put it together. But I started with the front because it is more of a flatter part, and I knew that it's more of the focus part, so if I wasn't able to get this part done, it wasn't worth even trying. And I go ahead and I trace my little template that I made using paper onto the foam using a marker, so then I can later cut it out. As you can see here on the top, I kind of noticed that the top was a little bit too small, so I extended that from the template, which is one of the great things about not cutting straight on the foam but getting a template first, is you can make adjustments if you notice some things that are not quite right. So here I am going through cutting the foam with scissors. This is just some random foam I found on Amazon, and I also have a box cutter so I can cut some of the more extreme angles, like around here. I was able to cut those a little bit better with the box cutter later on, and I'm going through here. There you go. And I'm going through here and just getting all the details down, and yeah. So now that that's done, I'm using the scissors and I'm cutting at an angle to give it a beveled shape, because it did end up with some really rough edges and corners. So I wanted to give more of a beveled shape to all the outer edges. It will kind of give it more of a more defined look to it. And I wanted to get rid of all the cutting marks from the scissors, so I got my little torch. And I found out that if you burn the edges like this, it gives it a really nice texture and it gets rid of those cutting edges. But spoiler alert, I have some issues with this later on in the video. But as you can see, it gives it somewhat of a rock texture. And I'm going through, there is a design on the front of the helmet that is a relief design, so it's sticking out from the main part of it. So I went ahead and I cut some pieces out, and I did the same thing where I went through and I beveled it, and I got some glue using some CA glue, and I apply it onto the main foam body little by little, and I use some alligator hair clips in order to hold them in place. I also have the tape, which I was going to use as a backup if the alligator clips didn't really work too well, but the clips were fine, so I was able to shape it and glue them on there. And here is where I encounter an issue in a few moments. So making sure everything's glued down properly. I'm doing pretty okay. I'm feeling kind of confident of this project. And I decide that I am going to go ahead and use the same technique I used earlier after the glue dried, and use a little torch to smooth out some of the edges on the foam. And it turns out the raw edges that are cut of the foam melt quite nicely, but the flat sides, as you can see, caught on fire and it melted. So I had some crevices and some holes that formed from that right around the front, which I wasn't too happy about, but I was already planning on using some caulking in order to fill in the gaps between the pieces that I added on there. So what I ended up doing, since I'm going to paint the whole piece, I was able to build up the areas that were burnt with the caulking, and that allowed me to salvage the piece. So as you can see, I'm using a lot of caulking and blended it in with some water. With a project like this, I ended up using a lot more water than you would if you were using it on a home project, but this is not for a ceiling purpose. This is more of a aesthetically pleasing purpose. So as you can see, I was able to get that all filled in, And now it's time to let it all dry. So now that it's dry, it is time to sketch out all of the areas and how everything's going to be carved. So I'm grabbing my trusty pen and I'm sketching on all the different designs that are present on the front of the helmet. And it was a little tricky drawing on the caulking, but I was able to get it done. And I'm going through and doing all the designs. As you can see, there is a little bit of asymmetry to the helmet, which I wanted because that's how it looks like. And so yeah, there I messed up some of the drawing, but it's okay. Like I said, the good thing about this is there is some symmetry to the designs, but it's not perfectly symmetrical. And so yeah, after I do this, I realize on the right side there's a little bit too much extra foam, so I ended up cutting that out. And after I cut that out, I do the same process again where I kind of burn it a little bit with the torch. So to carve it in, I got my wood burner and I decided I was going to see if this will work. And it did pretty okay. It did give those areas a lot of texture to it. As the wood burner is burning through the foam, it's kind of making it come off in chunks. This is supposed to be made out of stone, so it works really well. I wouldn't recommend this if we are trying to do something a lot more mechanical or a lot more cleaner. This is not going to be the right approach, but it is the only thing I could think of that could work. So if you guys know of any way to carve into foam that is nice and clean, let me know, because I had no clue. This is, like I said, my first project using foam this way, and overall for this project it worked perfectly fine. The other thing I found that I had an issue with the wood burner is the tip is actually screwed on, so I had to make sure that I was going only in one direction, because if I went the opposite direction, you know, lefty loosey, righty tighty, if I was going in a way that allowed the tip to turn left, the tip will just turn on itself and come off. So I had to make sure that I had to do it all in the same direction, that way the tip stayed in place. So that was a pretty tricky part, but overall it worked pretty well. Some of the caulking had a little bit of a harder time getting carved with the wood burner, but again it did a good enough job to make it look like stone, and for it to have the textures that it didn't really hurt it at all. So here I think I have the front piece done. Now for the rest of the helmet, I'm not going to go through the processes of it step by step because I'm following basically the same steps. So here we're going to start. I have the cutout shape for the back of the helmet, and I folded it down the middle because I'm adding a ridge down the middle, just like I did on these areas right here for the front of the helmet. So that's being added on. Then I'm going to go ahead and draw on the designs and burn it just like I did before. So here it is after everything's been burned and glued together. So all I did for the back after I added the ridge is I folded it together, glued it into one cylindrical shape, and I did a dart, which is a term you will use in sewing, where you kind of take a very small triangular shape out to connect two pieces together to create more of a rounded up shape. So I did that on the back of the helmet, and here's the designs that I cut out, the holes for the ears, which I'm going to use a different type of form for, and here is the finished product. Let me know what you guys thought, and hopefully you guys will tune in to part 2 when I actually paint the helmet. Bye! Thanks for watching my video. Make sure to like it, leave a comment below, and for more art related videos, go to my channel and subscribe.